There have been reports in the last month or so of that Nottingham Forest Morgan Gibbs-White is one of multiple candidates who is expected to feature in Man City's transfer deliberations as part of this much anticipated squad rebuild this summer. It's been reported over the weekend that City plan to advance on a deal to sign Gibbs-White, or advance on a deal in the next weeks. There should be no issues with personal terms, although Forest are hopeful that they can still keep hold of their star midfielder. Now, I think some Man City fans are maybe a little bit skeptical about this potential deal, but you've had some time, Stephen, to sort of mull over this one in the last few weeks. What are your thoughts now on a potential big money deal to sign Gibbs-White? Do you think this one makes sense for City?
No, I do YouTube videos about Manchester City Football Club, and I've never had a transfer more divisive than this. I think people tend to overreact these days, and myself included, maybe. But I think there's a bit of overreaction to this. People are acting like he's some bum. He's not. He's a really good player, very obviously. My initial reaction to this was one of more caution as well. I sort of went down the reductive route as well of like, oh, would he play for a Champions League semi-final side? Would he start for Real Madrid? And then I realized that's a stupid argument. Like would when we signed Nathan Ake, for example, we know that Real Madrid wouldn't have signed him. They wouldn't have signed Nathan Manuel Akanji for 14 million from Dortmund. And I'm not saying these guys are superstars, but they're treble winners. They were part of the best back line in Europe for a good year and a half, 2 years. And every club's circumstance is different, and the players that you sign don't have to be the best players to fit into to be the best players in midfield. They have to fit into the best side, the best organised side, and have the best structure around them and so on. So I don't think that argument is sort of relevant. And I realised it was a little bit reductive because there are tons of examples of players that Championship and Champions League winning sides have signed that others wouldn't because it's just we're all live in a different ecosphere in terms of the market and so on. And it's just how it goes. Madrid don't sign people anyway; they just wait for a free transfer, so that's their strategy. But I was a bit down initially on it because I did do the whole is he a De Bruyne replacement? Because of all due respect to Morgan Gibbs-White, like De Bruyne is the greatest to ever do it. It does feel like you want a marquee signing there. But I've had a little bit of time to think about it, and obviously you pay more attention to a player when you're linked to them. You watch more videos with them. You do a little bit of research, and you read around the player, and eventually you start to form a bigger picture as opposed to the one that you have in your head via highlights from your performance against your side and the odd game you've caught here and there, which is just sort of a scattergun approach to looking at them. And it's very obvious now in hindsight why Manchester City are tempted by this player. There's the functional regions. We have to sign homegrown players. We have to. The squad makeup requires it. There's so many players that are about to leave. And Kyle Walker's definitely one of them who's going. You'd expect John Stones, Jack Grealish are looking out the door potentially. There's rumours James McAtee might move on. Nathan Ake, who knows about his future there. Players are going to have to be signed that fit the quota, and Morgan Gibbs-White would be one of them for obvious reasons. The only, obviously, downside, well, not the only downside, the biggest downside and the drawback I hear from a lot of people is, oh, yeah, but it'd be fine if it was 60 million, but it'd be 80, 85. I get that argument. I don't know how much it'll be. He's got 2 years left on his contract. I mean, he's made no intention of signing it, made it pretty clear that he probably wants to move on. I'd be amazed if his agent isn't already saying, we want this move. We're not going to sign a new contract. Deal with it and sort it out. With all due respect to Forest, we want to go to Manchester City Football Club. I think he would jump in a heartbeat at playing under Guardiola. And I started to look at his skill set and think, well, why would City be interested in him? And I paid more attention to his game. And I think it struck me immediately is he's very, 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 very comfortable in possession. Doesn't lose the ball, which is a number one priority for Guardiola. He's very technically adept, really good footwork in tight spaces, the way you can just shift the ball from one foot to another, comfortable with either foot passing, very technically adept. Nuno at Forest, sorry, has used him in a whole bunch of positions, being a little bit deeper occasionally, in a double pivot, as an 8 on the left or the right, as a 10, shuttling across the front, out wide at one point on the right. He's so tactically versatile as well. He can play in multiple positions, which is a Guardiola trait that he'll absolutely love. And also, for me, the biggest sort of positive is his mentality as well. I'll get to his technical stuff again in a second, but he's the captain of Forest, and he's been their best player since he signed for like 40 odd million for Wolves a few years ago. And he's been their best player since then, by all reports. And when you start to read around him, and you realize that people who work with him, they gush about his mentality and his professionalism. Intensely dedicated footballer, really hard working, an iron will and a determination to not lose. Yeah, just really, really dedicated. People talk about, oh, it's a little bit lazy because he's just because they're English. Could he be another Kalvin Phillips or Jack Grealish? And I think presumably every English footballer is the same. It's just you want to. There's no point. It's silly. But I don't think that's the issue. For me, it felt like the issue for Grealish is that, and he said it himself, so I'm sort of semi using his own words against him here. He said he felt like he can complete football after winning the treble. And he even said he struggled a little bit for motivation. I can't remember the exact quotes, but he definitely said something along those lines afterwards. And I've always felt Jack Grealish was very much more comfortable being the bigger fish in the small pond, kind of player. Whereas at City, he's made a few off the cuff comments before as a joke, where he's like, "Oh, like Erling Haaland, he drinks this and does that, and he goes to bed at a certain time. I don't know how he does it." And that people tell you who they are, and I think Jack Grealish is a very good footballer. I don't think he's an elite winner in the way that get up and seize the day and grind, grind, grind. I don't think he's that kind of guy, Jack Grealish. I think he's talented, works hard enough, gets through it, but I don't think he's that level of like I want to win and I want to be the very best. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is different to that way, And I think Kalvin Phillips' problem was that I just don't think he could keep up and keep up with Manchester City. I don't think he quite had the. He was very similar where he was a little Leeds boy, and I don't think he quite knew how to react to life at Manchester City. I think Gibbs-White will be different. I think his mentality is different. I think he's intensely hardworking. He does have that relentless drive as well, that Bernardo Silva-esque running engine. He is versatile. He's the best player in the dressing room at Forest. He's technically really good. He's got 2 feet. He can play beautiful passes, by the way. He's done it against us. He didn't score, but that volley as well against us in the semi-final was ridiculous. I mean, that's on his weaker foot as well. Look, the guy clearly has a bit of magic in his boots, and I'm not saying he's a 10 out of 10 player or a world class player, but he strikes me as the guy who could give you 7.5, 8 out of 10 every game, like Ake did when he arrived. And before you know it, after a year or two, you realize, wait, this guy's actually phenomenally good. After a year or two developing, like Ake came in as a 7.5, 8 out of 10 player. And for the last year or two, people probably said he's City's best natural defender. Okay, and the point I'm using him for, he was a very similar profile. The captain of a club without the grand ideas of Manchester City, really hardworking, focused, technically good, who got better and better and better because they worked hard. I think Gibbs-White could be similar. Now I know the money's different, but this is the English tax, the Premier League tax, the positional tax, all that kind of stuff. But I think he could come in and complement Rodri, complement Bernardo Silva if he's still there, complement Florian Wirtz if he comes in, Phil Foden. And I think he could be a really smart player. The money could be high. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that because it's none of my business. But I get the appeal. I know he's not a superstar, but football isn't just these small technical players anymore. You have to be able to run as well. And I think Gibbs White might be better technically than we're giving him credit for. And I know he can do the running, and I know his attitude is good. You can just tell. And I think the appeal of him is quite obvious the more you think about it.
Yeah, and you've said previously, Stephen, that you don't think he would be a like for like replacement for someone like De Bruyne, but could he instead maybe be viewed as a long-term replacement for someone like Bernardo Silva that you mentioned earlier, his ability on the ball and his versatility in all those midfield positions?
Yeah, Bernardo will always be more majestically gifted in terms of technical ability. Yeah, the ball sticks to Bernardo Silva's feet. But I would argue that's sort of dipped a little bit in the past year or two anyway. He did it against their Wolves, actually, one little run, which was actually pure David Silva, but he saw a bit of his magic footwork. Very different players, but similar, I would argue, in terms of what they would bring on the pitch now in 2025. I think it would be more that the guy who can play multiple roles, roles, who has that box to box engine, really hard working. And I for the odd bit of spectacular goal, like Bernardo wasn't a great goal scorer, more a scorer of great goals, and also Bernardo got the odd beautiful assist, and Gibbs White can clearly do that. We've seen the crosses for Chris Wood and so on, and in a defensive minded team, he does all right. So I think he'd be more of that. Yeah, I don't think he'd be a De Bruyne replacement. I know he likes to play as a 10, but he does play as an 8 often. Morgan Gibbs White, he plays sort of everywhere really, and I think Bernardo Silva is irreplaceable to an extent because at his best he was top 10 in the world. He really was, literally on the Ballon d'Or rankings. But Gibbs White would very much suit Manchester City, I reckon, given the role that he would step into, which I think would be Bernardo's.
Yeah, and it's been well documented, of course, that City want to sign Florian Wirtz as well from Bayer Leverkusen, and they value him at over £100 million, I think. City have also been linked with a new goalkeeper, which you spoke about recently, Diego Costa's valued at around 50 million. And then I think City want to sign at least one new fullback as well, don't they? And Juventus's Andrea Cambiaso's one name that's high on their list, and he's valued at around 50 to 60 million pounds. So if all these rumours are to be correct, and some of these big money deals do materialise, we're looking at City spending north of 250, 300 million potentially on new
Yeah.
signings this summer. So is that realistic, do you think? And is it also necessary for City to spend that amount to get them back to where they want to be?
I haven't done the numbers myself. I've seen a few accounts that I follow online that seem to be very much in touch with these things financially. That seem to imply that City, for PSR reasons, especially if they move on De Bruyne, potentially people like Jack Grealish, who Jack Grealish apparently takes up 10% of Manchester City's overall budget every year. So you can see why they might be keen to move on people like that. But apparently, if we do that, yeah, then we might have 300 to 400 million pounds to spend. I think we do have the headroom because of. I know people go on about City spending and so on, but the net spend on all that it's been low over the past few years. It has, and it's probably a large part of the reason why this season has happened because City have, you know, they've held the fire, so to speak. And I do think City can spend 300 to 400 million pounds, and I do think you look at people like Florian Wirtz. If that happened, Morgan Gibbs-White, there's 200 million pounds there. A couple of fullbacks and a keeper. £420 million, £425 million. But I think that's what City will probably go spend this year. It's absurd amount of money. I'm not going to sit and deny it. But that's football these days. It's very easy to do that, and ultimately, City have got that credit in the bank. And if they can do that, I think they're going to have to. And I think when you look at the people that might leave, this is the cost. Kyle Walker, if we're getting a new fullback in, there's £50 million, and if you're trying to replace the likes of in the long term, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, of course, it's going to cost 200 million quid. Of course, it is. There's an absurd amount of money, but there are third level players. Like we're not gonna. There'll be the odds. I'm sure we'll sign the odd player who might be seen as a sort of bargain, a 30 million pound player. There'll probably be some French midfield I've never heard of, and who's 19. He'll come in for like 25, 30 million. He'll be a project or whatever. But the money's gonna have to be put on the table, and I think City do have the money to do that right now. And they have especially if you move some of the wages off because of amortization and all that kind of stuff. I think if they get rid of some of the big earners, which I think it will happen naturally anyway, because the thing about these older players is they are the ones who earn the big bucks because they've been here the longest and they've won the success and they've earned themselves up the financial ladder because of their success. So yeah, I think when you move on, the likes of in time Bernardo and Jack Grealish and John Stones and Kevin De Bruyne, you're freeing up like £1 million a week, which is these anyone we're going to sign. Look, Gibbs White isn't going to come in on £400,000 a week. It'd probably be around 200k or something like that, I would guess. Which is a substantial headroom compared to what Jack Grealish is on £300,000 a week minimum. I'm sure people like Bernardo Silva on 250, 300k, something like that. John Stones probably on 200k as well. This is big money, and I don't think Kusanov, for example, is on anything close to £200,000 a week. 75, I would guess, something like that, which is a lot of money, but it's nowhere near the same. So I reckon this is where City are at right now, and I do think they've got money to do it.